We've went into this many a times. We've said it on the streets that Esau is a wounded animal. You know, he is wounded, he is plagued. And like everything else, though, that wounded animal is going to strike at everything because, you know, pretty much so he's at his end. And no one will help him. Make sure this is recording. Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash. Double on as Ales and Apostles of Great Millstone who are teachers of truth and sincerity. And shout out to Akims out there in the four corners of the earth proclaiming this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem Rakakadash, Brakatam. So to a thief that, you know, what's their motto going to be when things run out? See, Esau's a thief, he's a liar, he's a murderer. What are they going to do when they find out that they have nothing left? They're going to steal from you, right? They're going to rip you off, they're going to steal from you. Well, that's always been his motto, right? So, you know, it's like, well, no wonder. No shit, right? So, here we are. You know, Esau at the end of everything, and it's just, everything's getting to him, you know. He's a wounded animal. You know, he can't deal with the stress that we deal with on a daily basis that we've been dealing with for a very, very long time. He's a wounded animal, and everything's getting to him. These three videos will show that as we get into this.
Have you ever paused for a moment in front of the grocery aisle and wondered when the glossy American dream with its white picket fences and abundance was replaced by stressful calculations? Right in the supermarket? Perhaps the image of a middle-class family standing stunned in front of a $5 carton of eggs or a bag of chips filled mostly with air is no longer rare. The average American family now has to spend about $445 more per month compared to a year ago to purchase the same amount of goods and services. It has truly crept into every meal, showing up on every receipt.
See, he can't shrug it off.
Safeway, and directly hitting the middle class long considered the solid backbone of the U.S.
To a thief, man, they're going to steal from you.
Being fed up seems to be spreading more strongly than ever, as food prices have surged more than 25% since early 2020, far outpacing real wage growth in many industries. Notably, this frustration is no longer just complaints. It is quietly transforming into a wave of fundamental changes in lifestyle and economic thinking. Let's look at a specific number, $1,200 for a month of groceries for a family of four. It may sound like a generous budget, but reality appears to be telling a completely different story. According to a USDA report in January 2026,
if you got $1,200, most don't.
Nearly $1,000
but Esau, he's going to steal from you.
Only covers the most basic raw ingredients, requiring hours in the kitchen to knead dough or simmer bones, something not everyone can afford in terms of time. So what does $1,200 get you? It barely keeps you on the line between having enough to eat and starting to tighten your belt. It is no longer the spending level of a comfortable middle-class family regularly enjoying juicy steaks from Omaha Steaks. Instead, it is a mental battle to keep your shopping cart from exceeding the budget before even reaching the checkout. On top of that, your grocery bill is now being invaded by non-edible yet essential items. Household necessities like Charmin toilet paper or Tide detergent are experiencing annual inflation rates of around 4.5% to 5%. As you spend more on cleaning supplies, the amount left for a steak or a box of cereal.
But they order that
this is what people call spending more than eating less, an ironic paradox that no one really wants to experience. Do you remember what it felt like going to the supermarket in 2021? With a crisp $100 bill, you could confidently walk out with a cart full of milk, eggs, fresh produce, and a few favorite snacks. But by 2026, that same $100 seems to have been ruthlessly trimmed down. Its purchasing power is now only half or even less.
That is true, though.
Beef and veal prices are projected to rise by about 6.3% this year alone. Cuts of meat that once made up only a small portion of the bill are now
I'm getting turkey ground beef instead.
Eggs and dairy are no exception.
You know, no beef,
there are
turkey ground meat.
Public concern, overall prices remain up to 40% higher than pre-2020 levels. Meanwhile, vegetables and fruits are also on the list of rising essentials. With a 6.1% increase over the past 12 months, maintaining a healthy diet now seems more like an economic privilege than a lifestyle choice. Perhaps the most ironic part is the phenomenon known as shrinkflation. You might be paying $6.29 for a bag of Lay's chips, but when you open it, most of what you get is air. That bag now contains only about 2/3 of the volume compared to the $3.99 per bag in 2021. It feels as if manufacturers are testing your eyesight and patience by shrinking everything while keeping prices the same or even raising them. There's also a term that sounds a bit unfamiliar, hidden hunger. It seems the American middle class is being pushed into this state. You may have enough money to get calories from cheap rice or pasta, but not enough to afford real nutrition from quality protein or fresh vitamin. The psychology of grocery shopping has changed dramatically. We no longer shop to enjoy the fruits of our labor or to pick out the best foods for a weekend feast. Instead, going to the supermarket feels like a survival task, a journey full of calculations, and, at times, overwhelming disappointment. Perhaps we are living in a strange era, where the numbers on paper seem to be going up, yet the feeling of prosperity keeps evaporating right before our eyes. People say that average wages are increasing by about 3.6%, which sounds promising, but they conveniently forget to mention that the at-home food price index has quietly climbed to 4.2%. You get a small raise, only to realize you've just been pushed into a higher income tax bracket. This so-called tax ladder seems like a sophisticated way to ensure that, after Uncle Sam takes his share, the money left in your pocket isn't even enough to make up for the fact that the price of a dozen eggs has increased by 1.5 times. Disposable income, the money meant for enjoying life,
Trump told you to shut the fuck up about the goddamn eggs, didn't he?
Is the middle class becoming the stepchild of the economy? While support programs like SNAP are adjusted for inflation to protect lower income groups, those who have worked their whole lives, those who consistently pay taxes fully and on time, are left to fend for themselves against the full pressure of the market. There is no safety net, no adjustment for your effort, just you and a grocery bill that keeps getting longer. If food prices are a direct punch,
Yep,
then
so
fuel and utility costs are the flanking
Second
blows from
Ezra
both
chapter
sides. With
15
gas prices in
tells
many
us
states
they're
exceeding
going to steal it
$4.50
from you
per
when they
gallon,
see
every
that you
trip to
have it.
supermarkets like Kroger or Publix suddenly becomes a significant expense. You're not just paying for food, you're paying for the transportation cost of every item on the shelf. It's a double inflation spiral with no way out. Take a look at your electricity or heating bill. An increase of 7% to 10% has become the new normal. When housing costs and mortgage payments are swallowing up to 45% of a family's income, people are forced to make harsh choices. Do you prioritize keeping your home warm or buying quality protein for dinner? And for those who are starting to care more about their health, the burden is even heavier. With health insurance premiums projected to rise another 6.5% in 2026, choosing
that's
between expensive
Obamacare.
prescription medication and a basket of fresh groceries at Whole Foods is no longer
But
a
it's
far-fetched
trumped
scenario.
up.
Perhaps
He
the
didn't
most concerning
repeal
part is not that we are
Obamacare.
spending
He
less,
lied
but
to
that we
you.
are drawing from the past to pay for the present. Data shows that the U.S. personal savings
you
rate has fallen
retards
below 4%,
voted for
a
him
record low
again.
that
You
reflects
get what you
exhaustion. Instead of
deserve.
saving for the future, people are turning to credit cards with APR rates exceeding 20%. That's not spending. It's a debt trap to sustain the most basic needs. Take a look at the beef counter, once a source of pride on every American family's table. According to somewhat grim reports from CattleFax and the USDA,
I
the US
went to
cattle herd
ground
is at its
turkey.
lowest level in decades. The result? Prices for ground beef and steak have quietly risen about 25-30% compared to just a few years ago. It seems that a juicy steak from Omaha Steaks is gradually becoming more of a commemorative treat than a regular dinner. And it's not just beef. Isn't it absurd that a dozen eggs, one of the most basic foods, still sits at $4 to $5 in many states? Even though people say the crisis has passed, operating and packaging costs are finding every way to keep prices up in the treetops. Even fresh milk or Land O'Lakes butter is not immune. They've become some of the most painful inflation gauges every time you push your cart past the refrigerated section. Even the last fortress of savings frozen food is betraying us. Who would have thought that a frozen DiGiorno pizza or a few boxes of convenient taquitos would be priced close to a fast food meal? When frozen food is no longer cheaper than
7-Eleven prices everywhere. Wham, wham, wham. Let's get into another one here.
This is a Substack post from a guy named Mark A. Shyrock. And
So,
it's
oil's going to be out by the 4th of July.
Shelves, 60 days of famine. It says what caused it and what you need to do immediately. So this is a really long article, and I'm not going to bore you through reading through this really, really long article. What I did, though, is I put together a summary of it. So I'll be going over a summary of this article because it's actually a really, really good article that I think is worth paying attention to. But before I show you my summary, I first wanted to give credit to this guy, Mark.
Shelves shall be found empty.
And his Substack is Mark A.
Storehouse is found empty, rather.
So if you want to subscribe to him or support him in whatever way you want to, I just want to give him credit for putting together this information because
See, we had it all along.
Pulling together all this information.
They're the Holy
getting into,
Scriptures.
this is a kind of
Written
overview
to the
of this
Israelites.
article. And so, okay, what does this mean? Right. Okay. So let's kind of break it down. So basically, it's a data-verified warning that the United States runs out of usable oil by July 4th of this year, that Europe runs out this month, and that diesel runs out first. And they basically how the food system runs on diesel. So he's got a lot of sources, a lot of research behind this. So the bottom line, he says, this is not a price crisis anymore. It is a physical shortage, a point where fuel stops being available at any price because there's none left to sell. Okay, so looking at the step, okay, what happened? Right, so as we all know, February 28th, the U.S. and Israel launched strikes against Iran that killed their leader. Iran retaliated by closing the Strait of Hormuz, the choke point that carried 20% of global oil. So for 2 months, the world coasted on tankers already at sea. That floating buffer kept prices high, but stable and kept fuel flowing. It masked the full scale of what was happening. Right, and this is how these things oftentimes work, where you'll see an event happen, and you'll think, oh, okay, that event happened, yet a few weeks later, there's still groceries. A few weeks later, or a month or two later, there's still oil at the pump. Maybe the gas is more expensive, but you can still go and fuel your car or buy heating oil for your home or whatever it is. But the thing is, though, is that oftentimes it's because there's a carryover, right? So it's not like everything is just instantly on demand. So there's often the process before the
taper it off, you could say.
Actually affects your daily life in a very
kind of like the budget. They just kicked the can down the road.
So
not this time.
Here, okay, going back to
can was already kicked down the road.
Iran. March 4th, Iran formally declares that the Hormuz is closed. So April 28th, UAE leaves OPEC, right, the biggest cartel withdrawal in 65-year history. May 2nd, Spirit Airlines ceases all operations, 17,000 jobs gone. May 3rd, the last Middle East tanker, the New Corella, docks at Long Beach. May 2026, Europe hits tank bottoms this month. And July 4th, supposedly what he's saying is that U.S. hits tank bottoms 8 weeks out. So tank bottoms basically, as you would imagine, it basically means that the oil amount has reached the bottom. Actually, he explains it here. Okay, he says the phrase that most Americans have ever heard. So tank bottoms doesn't mean that tanks are low. It means the system stops working. So oil storage needs a minimum volume of liquid to maintain the pressure that allows the pumps to function. So when the levels drop below that threshold, remaining oil becomes physically inaccessible. The pumps fail, pipelines can't deliver, refineries can't process. So it doesn't matter what the price is. It doesn't matter how much more money you have. The fuel is physically gone from the system. Okay, so here's a quote from Jeff Curry out of the Carlyle Group. This is in Bloomberg TV of May 6th. He says, "It's baked in, full stop. It's going to take so long to get all this restarted that those inventories will continue to draw." Okay, so the data behind this warning. So 95% collapse in the Hormuz shipping traffic. So from 120 ships a day to 5 to 6. Okay, so 452 was the U.S. average gas price, which was up from 281 in January. California, it's $6 plus. So 1 billion barrels of stored petroleum are depleted globally since February. Right, so this is 1 billion barrels of stored petroleum. These are kind of stores, right? Has been depleted. Okay, so the Oil hit to 144 a barrel, so that's the physical Brent crude per barrel price, the highest since 1987. And 2005 was the last time that U.S. diesel inventories were this low. And they're saying 64 weeks is the minimum time for new fuel to reach U.S. pumps, even if peace came today. But what we're seeing is that there's still a lot of shenanigans going on over in Iran. Like, it's just not stopping. So he says that diesel runs out first and everything stops. He says diesel is not a luxury fuel. It is the blood supply of the American economy. So 70%, so let's talk about how this actually affects day-to-day, right? 70% of all U.S. food is transported by truck. So every truck runs on diesel. And I know that there's Tesla trucks coming out and everything like that, but those aren't really a dominant force yet.
And they're not real.
Transport. Okay, every tractor, every combine, every refrigerated trailer, every freight train, every one of them runs on diesel. So when trucks stop moving, food does not get picked up from the farms, so it doesn't reach the processing plants, it doesn't arrive at grocery stores. So it's not inflation, right? Inflation is when price goes up. This is when the shelves go empty because there's nothing to put on those shelves.
There you go.
Okay?
Storehouses being
right?
found empty. This is what's going to happen.
So looking at past times when we had things happening with oil, okay? So when the oil, how much oil was affected, right? So in 1973, during the Arab oil embargo, prices quadrupled. That was when they had an 8% drop in oil. 1979, during the Iranian Revolution, prices doubled from 7%. 1990, when Iraq invades Kuwait, prices doubled to 7%. And then this is when 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the prices are up 60% at 3% affected. Okay, so 2026, we're seeing a 15 to 20% drop in oil movement. Okay, so this is huge. Like, this is unprecedented. So it says this is the largest gross disruption to global oil supply in modern history. Unlike 1973, OPEC cannot respond. Its own producers are locked behind a blockade. Unlike 1990, there's no quick coalition solution. The damage is physical and structural. Okay, so here he's talking about two prices for oil. So in a normal market, paper price, which is futures contracts, and physical price is what real buyers pay for real barrels. They're tracked together. And I've covered this a lot in the silver markets, right? How you have paper silver versus physical silver, or even looking to a certain degree of looking at the COMEX pricing of silver versus, say, the Shanghai silver, right? So you have typically these things are very, very tied closely together. But then when things kind of go awry, then these prices they sort of break apart. Okay, so he's saying here with oil, the gap has run $20 to $60 per barrel since this crisis began. So on May 8th, paper was at 101.65. The physical was near 150. Okay, and similar to silver, right? One of them is wrong. But when the paper catches up to the physical, the repricing will be violent. And that's what we always see, is right when you have the physical price, if you have the paper, because they use the paper prices oftentimes to manipulate the market, because they can print paper magically appear. It's like dollars, they can print unlimited money. It's like silver, they can print unlimited silver paper. But when there's a physical price, when more people want the physical silver or the physical oil, when that far exceeds what the paper market can catch up, eventually the paper market has to actually meet and follow the physical. Physical drives the real prices. And so when physical prices go up, the illusion that's created with the paper prices has to correct itself to follow the physical, because physical is what really matters.
So there you have it, though. When you ain't got it, you ain't got it. So the system is collapsing. We got one more here. Esau's being plagued by all of it, and he doesn't know how short of time he really has, but we do, because we have eyesight. So just pull up a chair and sit back, because we've been dealing with cutbacks, reducing the things for a long time. I mean, we've always been in the ghettos. We find a way to survive, right? Esau, the only thing he knows how to do is to steal from you. He doesn't know how to survive. He doesn't think like we do. He's going to steal it from you if he sees that you have it. I'm not saying that we Jakes don't do that. Yeah, a lot of our people are corrupt and do that kind of shit too, but yet we still always had a way of surviving. Esau can't think like that. The only thing he knows how to do is steal, kill, and destroy. So here he is being plagued. He's a madman. I mean, look at how fucking mad DJ Chump is. And these people worship him like a god. Declared himself to be like the Most High. Has depictions of him being JC. Of course, the image of Cesare Borgia with Donald Trump in the front, but yet at the same time, though, has created himself to be like God. And declared himself to be like God, and these people worship him like God. They'll do anything for him.
I'm just hearing about these mutated ticks we have in the United States now.
Oh, no.
From Moscow, I've heard. And these things will literally come after you.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Ticks. Yeah, you've heard about them.
To this guy's legs. I mean, we have enough problems. Now they want to use this bioweapon against us. We had Lyme disease. And like we said before in the other video, they've been dropping out boxes of these things on large farms across the United States. But why would they want to wreak havoc on people's lives, livestock, and people's health? That's the part I can't figure out.
Agenda
Why
2030.
do they want to do this to us? We have enough problems. Bioweapons and insects. If you think about it, it's ingenious. It's a remarkable idea that they could do that. They could fill these things full of diseases and toxins and release them into the wild, where they could infect animals, wild animals, domestic animals, humans, children, anything with a heartbeat, basically. Yeah, I just found out about this. So we have mutated ticks from Moscow. But who released them? Was it the United States, or was it some other country that dropped them out of an airplane?
DARPA, maybe?
And just like started crawling everywhere. Does anybody know where these mutated ticks come from?
Caleb
Let me know
Gates?
what's going on. Is this real? Is it just a made-up TikTok story? Someone enlighten me, please. I want to know what's going on with these ticks. Are they mutated, or what's going on with the regular ticks? I have no idea.
Yep.
Ticks. Let's talk about them. So I just got home from my mom's, and she called me frantic saying, I just pulled off 4 ticks, and I can't see the rest of me. I need you to check my back, my legs. I ended up pulling a total of 9 ticks off of my mom. 9. And all she was doing today was working on concrete around the pool. She was not in grass. She wasn't mowing. She wasn't outside around trees. Nothing. On concrete. So we're going to talk about it because as a nurse practitioner urgent care, I'm already seeing this. I'm already having plenty of patients come in saying, I have had a tick, and what do I need to do? So this is the first thing. If you're going to be outside in any capacity, you're going to come in and you're going to check your head. You're going to check under your armpits. You're going to check your arms, legs. You're going to check everywhere. I've already seen patients who have also worked alongside the pool on concrete, places like not in the grass or in bushes or weeding or garden or anything like that. And they're in crevices. They're in the lady bits. They're in places. You have got to look everywhere, every single place. And that's something as a mom I do with my children. I am checking every crevice, unfortunately. When they're bathing, I'm like, all right, we gotta make sure, because you've been outside, we live near the woods, and we live in the Midwest where the ticks are prominent. And these ticks are minuscule. I mean, the size of a pepper flake. I mean, it's so small. So remember, they can carry the tick-borne illness too. And most of the ticks that I pulled off my mom were the Lone Star tick. But it doesn't matter what tick it is. Any tick can have a tick-borne illness. It doesn't have to just be certain ones. But again, this is where the prevention and awareness and making sure that you're checking your child, checking yourself every single time. Another thing is I have patients often come in and see me and, oh, I pulled it off 4 days ago. I pulled it off a week ago. What do we do? The thing is we're not really going to do anything unless you're symptomatic. If you're symptomatic, then we might test you for the treatment and go ahead, or for the tick-borne illness, and go ahead and put you on the treatment. If you're asymptomatic, not having any symptoms, we're not really going to do anything. However, if you come in within 72 hours of pulling a tick off, no matter how long the tick's been on there, if it's been on a minute or less than, longer, it doesn't matter, we will give you the tick-borne illness prophylaxis, which is 2 capsules of doxycycline right now. And that is something I try to stress to patients, like, don't wait. If you're going to do it, come within a day or 2. We can give it to you. If you're concerned about the site might look red. That's common. It was a bug bite. I mean, it's still a tick. Yes, it's scary. It's still a bug bite. So apply some antibiotic ointment. That's typically what I prescribe, along with the tick prophylaxis, if you come within 72 hours. So the big thing is awareness, awareness, awareness. The CDC goes over this really well. It talks about how to remove the tick, how to check for ticks, and the different ticks that there are and the regions that they're prominent in. Being in Ohio,
Yeah, and you've got to worry about hantavirus hoax, do you?
And so it is so
Plagues are coming.
important that you are educated on this and making sure that you're checking yourself as well as your
Red
children,
Hebrew Edomites are getting the worst
and
of
making
it.
sure no one else is got a tick on them. I will tell you from experience, and thankfully I knew the signs and I knew the things to look for, but with my husband, he had Rocky Mountain spotted fever. He had the rash on his hands, his soles of his feet. I called a colleague, we got things going. The thing is we ran every test, not knowing that his joint pain, body aches, fever, flu-like symptoms were from that tick 6 weeks ago. That he was golfing, had a tick on his hip, and I was like, oh my gosh, let me see your hands, let me see your feet. It was Rocky Mountain spotted fever. We gave him the treatment, he was good to go. This is so important, it's close to home, and now pulling 9 ticks off of my mother, we need to bring more awareness and we need to be educated. So, check for ticks.
So there you have it, man. Esau getting plagues all over. And so here we go. Worldwide famine, right? So, as if it wasn't bad enough. Well, you know as well as I do, this fertilizer shortage. They're not coming up with any solutions. You can use horse manure. You can use lots of things. People don't think like survivors because they're not really farmers. They're weak in every way possible. Kind of like the whole stupid baby milk formula. Remember that? That ran short a few years ago. Rather than actually doing something like actually breastfeeding their kids, right? They just, wham, we're out of fucking baby milk. Shut your fucking hole and fucking feed your kid, you fuck. Well, same thing here about the fertilizer. They're not dummying up. They're not using other resources to fertilize, And sometimes you just got to come up with stuff. No, these people can't think that way, man. They're going to allow this to happen because they're that fucking retarded. Esau's a fucking retard. Egypt's farmers hit by Iran war price surge. Egyptian smallholders seeing their lives upended by the Iran war, with soaring fertilizer prices forcing many to lay off workers and reduce cultivation. So yeah, there's a solution there. Let's just reduce the amount. Let's not dummy up. Even though we got all these fucking workers here, let's just cut all the production and all that, because we can't do nothing. I mean, it's just about as retarded as this may sound. It doesn't sound retarded now, but it does to me. I grew up when the computer wasn't king, when computers were still being developed. So you knew how to do math if you worked at a grocery store. Okay, so if a computer being done, which wasn't even computer run, you had to do the math, adding machines, etc. You had to do the math, give people the receipt, give people the change. But if the computers are down, you can't have any sales. Oh, the whole store is shut down. That's how fucking goddamn retarded these people are, right? They can't do anything without their goddamn computer because they're not smart enough to write everything down on a receipt. Imagine how much this is accelerated, right? So when I see shit like this, oh, well, we can't do we're not going to have enough crops this year because we don't have enough fertilizer. It's like, man, you're a fucking retard. You're an idiot. You don't know anything. Well, that's what's happening worldwide. Before the U.S. and Israeli state launched their war, the world would end up engulfing the region. He cultivated a full acre with small crew. Now he farms just half of what he's sacking, So there's a lot of wham because we can't get it. We can't get the fertilizer. So we're just going to cut production, and what a retard. Why not stretch out what you have? I can think of lots of solutions to this problem here. Overall, you can still get shit done. You can get shit done if you wanted to. This is all being manufactured. Of course it is. How Latin America responded to the U.S. crackdown against Cuba. Most regional leaders voiced solidarity with the island, while some fear they could be next in D.C.'s crosshairs. Well, you can do nothing and just let the U.S. take over, but like you did with Venezuela, you didn't do anything to defend Venezuela. You never formed together. Not even Colombia, which I thought would have been on the side of Maduro. He didn't really do anything either. He caved in. Nobody stood up to this bully, so this bully's taking more. Wednesday, Justice Department accused 94-year-old Castro of ordering the 1996 shootdown of 2 American terrorist planes off Cuba's coast, which killed 4 activists. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary Rubio, the son of Cuban immigrants, never concealed his aspirations for regime change. So, pretty much that's what he wants. U.S. President Trump echoed the sentiment, calling Cuba a failed nation, and suggested Washington should take it over. So there it is. Regime change in Cuba. And they're not going to. I don't think they're going to do anything about it. Who stands with Cuba? Who doesn't? Brazil has been one of the region's most active voices in support of Cuba. Well, let's just see how good Lula is, because Lula's been doing a lot of things on both sides. Kind of plays both because, of course, Brazil, part of the BRICS nations, right? It's not possible for someone to think that they own other countries. What are they doing with Cuba now? What did they do with Venezuela? Is that democratic? In late April, Brazil was one of the countries that pledged to ramp up humanitarian aid to Cuba, calling for dialogue and stressing that the Cuban people must be free to determine their own future. Well, that obviously wasn't enough. Yeah, see, here we go. Colombian President Petro clearly denounced the U.S. policy, stressing that military aggression against Cuba is... Well, you let Venezuela fall. Nicaragua President Ortega himself, under U.S. sanctions targeting his sons and senior officials, delivered some of the sharpest pushbacks. In late April, he labeled Trump mentally deranged. Well, you got that right. Okay, he's deranged. What are you going to do to protect Cuba from him? You see, nobody's protecting. They're not protecting each other. They're just letting the U.S. come in and bully. They're not even calling for Russia to help them, right? We hope this reaches our beloved Cuba and Venezuela. We have suffered so much, and the model of freedom reaches the last refugee of the continent, he said. And that's coming from Argentina. So, like everything else, though, They're just idly standing by while the U.S. takes over all these places. And they'll be next. Muammar Gaddafi warned about this over there in West Asia. Look at how many fucking countries have fallen since Libya. You know, Syria fell. Lebanon, you know, that's falling. Yemen has been invaded. Saudi Arabia had invaded them for years, working for the Israeli state. Now it's sort of backed up, but the damage is done, you know. At least Yemen can fight back, but for how long, right? All these places have been taken over. Iraq, all those places. Just totally fucking decimated. Oil market experts at Rapid Energy Group warned that a prolonged closure of the strait could trigger oil shock severe enough to hit consumers half hard and push the economy into a downturn on a scale approaching that of the 2008 Great Recession. Well, this is greater than the Great Recession. When you just don't have it anymore, yeah, it goes beyond that, right? Former U.S. Colonel asked question, did Pakistan deploy forces into Saudi Arabia to stop the U.S. from using their facilities, or are they there to help defend from Iran? I think that they're there for both. Okay. For one, the Saudi Arabia knows that they're being attacked because of the bases that they're hosting. So they still need places in defense because they know that Iran's going to retaliate anyways. So they definitely want soldiers there to keep it in place. So on Thursday, Alex Jones commented on former U.S. Colonel Wilkerson discussed the Pakistani forces being deployed to Saudi Arabia, the bigger picture of the Iran war. Well, let's just see if I can play that. See if this works. It says live, so
and
it may not.
The CIA wants that. We just leave communists in charge. So you were right. I mean, so we did a regime change. When's the election coming? Evening, basically all for Massey's opponent, where Trump's going. He's not even worried about the Iran war now. It's all the ballroom. And just where she sees this unfolding in the future of America, the midterms, Trump at all-time low.
Yeah, who cares? That has nothing to do with it, right? Yeah, he doesn't provide links to the specific parts of the video that we're trying to get to here, but nonetheless, though, Trump sending 5,000 additional troops to Poland after some number reduced from Germany. So moving from Germany into Poland. President Trump announced on Truth Social late Thursday that he will send 5,000 additional troops to Poland. Based on the successful election of the now President of Poland, who I was proud to endorse, in our relationship, I am pleased to announce that the U.S. will be sending an additional 5,000 troops to Poland. Well, he got what he wanted there. Yeah. Yeah, so right there. As it stands, reports from a week ago suggest that the 4,000 have been paused or even canceled, with Pentagon commanders cited in media saying they were blindsided by the decision. Well, Trump does what he's going to do anyway, you know. You can't stop him, you know. So, like everything else, though, you know, the so-called ceasefire being fragile, you know, as this goes into, because, well, we know it was a fake ceasefire to begin with, but, you know, pretty much so. It's all offset, all on purpose. So, like everything else, though, we usually, when you hear pauses like that, and then if they don't come to an agreement, you know that they're about to launch. But like everything else, though, you know, Iran has refortified even better than the U.S. has. But nonetheless, though, under the guise of a so-called ceasefire, it's really just a gathering of, you know, okay, what's our next move? Because they've exhausted all their options, so they need more time to think. Kind of like when you're winning in chess and you need to take a 45-minute break or whatever because you're getting your ass whipped. That's what's going on there.
The ceasefire between the United States and Iran appears to be nearing its end, with both sides exchanging attacks in the Persian Gulf despite efforts to broker a peace deal. On May 13th, an Indian ship carrying livestock sank after getting hit by a projectile off the northern coast of Oman. All 14 Indian crew members were rescued from the vessel by Omani authorities. The very next day, May 14th, a vessel was seized off the coast of the United Arab Emirates and was redirected toward Iranian territorial waters. A more serious incident came on May 17th, with the UAE reporting a drone attack on the Barakah nuclear power plant. A drone struck an electrical generator just outside the inner perimeter of the operational plant in the area of El Dhafra near Abu Dhabi. No injuries were reported and radiological safety levels were unaffected. Later, the UAE revealed that the drone was one of 3 launched from Iraqi territory on that day. 2 others were intercepted. Also, on May 17th, the Ministry of Defense of Saudi Arabia reported that 3 drones were intercepted and destroyed by its air defenses after entering the kingdom's airspace from the direction of Iraq. No casualties or damage were reported at the time. No side in Iraq has yet claimed the attacks on the UAE or Saudi Arabia, but the factions of the Iran-aligned Islamic resistance in Iraq were unofficially accused. Despite all recent escalation, U.S. President Trump announced on May 18 that he called off a planned military attack on Iran after the leaders of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE urged him to hold off as serious negotiations were underway. Trump said that out of respect for the 3 Persian Gulf leaders, he had instructed Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Daniel Kaine, and the U.S. military not to carry out the attack, which was scheduled for May 19. He warned, however, that the order could be reversed quickly if talks failed. In an apparent response, the Iranian military warned on May 19th that it will open new fronts against the U.S. if war resumes. Later on the same day, the United States military seized another Iran-linked oil tanker in the Indian Ocean. The tanker reportedly carried more than 1 million barrels at the time. While ongoing diplomatic efforts seem serious, the U.S. and Iran are still far off on most key issues. All recent reports also suggest that Israel is pressuring the U.S. to attack the Islamic Republic again. Based on all of these factors, a return to war appears much more likely than a settlement.
Yep. So there you go. All, because of least of the flock, right? Which we know part of that least of the flock is, the Amalekite himself, Nero 47, who is Amalek. Can't get into that enough, He doesn't represent the U.S., he is Amalek. He has his heritage, right? Which, you already know that his bitch wife is nothing more than a fucking Amalekite, but so is Chump. That's why he's been bailed out all them times. You see, he's not just a regular Edomite, he's an Amalekite. IRGC Navy coordinates safe passage of another 35 ships through the strait. So, yeah, it's not that they're stuck, it's just that anyone that's a part of the alliance against Iran, who's a traitor, is not getting through. The IRGC announced that it had coordinated the transit of another 35 ships through the strait in the past 24 hours. Over the past 24 hours, 35 ships, including oil tankers, container ships, and other commercial vessels, passed through the strait. After obtaining permission and with the coordination and security protection of the IRGC Navy. Passage came on top of 31 vessels, including oil tankers, container ships, and other commercial ships, that passed through the strait in the previous 24 hours. So like everything else though, yeah, it's not really closed, it's just closed to all the enemies of Iran. U.S. used more missile interceptors defending the Israeli state than its own forces did. Yeah, duh. No wonder why all those bases were wiped out, because they're protecting the Israeli state. And the Israeli state still got hit very fucking hard. U.S. has just 200 THAAD interceptors left after it restarts war on Iran, after a massive imbalance of defense of ally, which is more of an enemy. The U.S. has launched more than 200 terminal high altitude area defense, which is what THAAD is short for. Interceptors in defense of the Israeli state, roughly half of the Pentagon's total inventory, the Washington Post reported. The U.S. also fired more than 100 Standard Missile, 3 Standard Missile 6 interceptors from vessels in eastern Mediterranean. Israeli state fired fewer than 100 Arrow interceptors in around 90. See, they're not even using their own shit because the U.S. is always there. And the real reason Iran and the U.S. cannot end the war, money. Well, of course, duh. The illusion of that petrodollar, which is no longer holding water because there ain't going to be any more fucking oil very soon. And that's the whole point, is to bring in the New World Order system. You see how that's all being ushered in by the war. You don't even need a fake pandemic lockdown like, because you already got them other plagues coming in anyways. But also, what's the point? The oil's going to run out anyways. Most likely the next lockdown will be due to civil unrest. Just people fucking losing it, because you see that Esau's that wounded animal, and just chaos everywhere, because that's what 2nd Ezra chapter 15, which we're going to get in just a little bit, is talking all about. Iran is reconstructing its military capabilities that were degraded by the U.S.-Israeli bombing campaign much faster than expected, and is already producing new drones. CNN reported, citing sources familiar with U.S. intelligence. The other work Iran has done includes replacing missile sites, launchers, and production capacity for other weapon systems. Other U.S. media reports have said that U.S. believes Iran has access to 70% of its missile launches and maintains about 70% of its pre-war missile stockpile, which means that, wow, you know, to use only 30% in those first is actually pretty good as compared to how much the U.S. has exhausted everything defending Israeli state, and not doing very well at that, I might add. If the U.S. and Israeli state do restart airstrikes, Iran would likely respond with major strikes on oil infrastructure in the Gulf Arab states. Checkmate! It's already going to run out by the 4th of July, but restarting this is going to definitely, you know, cause it. And don't forget, you know, now you're officially in the summer over there. If they hit the energy infrastructure, that will cause nothing but a lot of people are going to die, because most people over here, as I said before, can't even deal without air conditioning for a day. How much worse over there where it's really fucking burning? They ain't got it. They ain't going to make it. You know, they're going to fucking die of heat exhaustion over there in Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. So, you know, they're being sent over there. They're never coming back. Iran would most likely respond with major strikes against oil infrastructure in the Gulf Arab states, which would significantly exaggerate the global economic crisis already caused by the war and the rising gas prices. Well, you ain't got to worry about prices if they just ain't got it. It's not for sale anymore. Trump says the U.S. opposes Strait of Hormuz tolls, vows to get uranium from Iran. Ooh, big talk. Big talk. I mean, didn't you try that already with the C-130s? Oh no, you went with the bombing pilot story, right? You know, the rescue pilot. President Trump on Thursday that the U.S. opposes any tolls on shipping through the strait and vowed Iran would not be allowed to retain highly enriched uranium. Trump claimed Iran is suffering major financial losses because of restrictions on shipping activity. Bullshit. Asked whether Iran could retain a stockpile of highly enriched uranium under any future agreement, Trump answered bluntly, "No, we get the highly enriched. We will get it." Trump said, "We don't need it. We don't want it. We'll probably destroy it after we get it, but we're not going to let them have it." Trump reiterated the U.S. will not allow them to have a nuclear weapon, blah, blah, blah. Same thing as King Bibby says, right? So got one more here, you know, but got to bring this scripture out, right? So that brings me here. I got the GNTD version of this 2nd Ezra chapter 15, verse 7. You know, because we're sighing and crying for the abominations being committed here, right? And we're seeing that the Most High Yahweh is plaguing Egypt, unlike any other time. The crops are failing, just like it said that they would, right? You know, and the blasting and hail that will be coming very soon via World War III. You know, when Babylon the Great gets taken out. You know, and that is by a barrage of missiles. And these ICBMs, there's 200 million worldwide. And most of them are going to be fired down upon this place, turning Babylon the Great into a lake of fire, better known, you know, pretty much as the cup of wrath of his indignation for all the wicked, you know, and those that take the MOTB. So, make no mistake about it, this doesn't pull any punches, and there's even more details of it in 2 Ezra chapter 15. Verse 7, "Therefore the Most High Yahweh says, I will no longer remain silent about the wickedness of these godless people." You know, these people that, you know, pretty much, you know, don't have a God, you know, proclaim themselves to be God, right? You know, talking about the Edomites and the wicked that are joined unto. "I will no longer tolerate it." See? You know, it's become intolerable. "They have murdered innocent people, and the blood they have spilled cries out to me for revenge." Yeah, and that's what we're doing. We're going out there on the streets teaching, and we're praying to them individually or as collectively as a group. We're saying death to Esau, Edom, death to Babylon, death to America. "The souls of the righteous are constantly pleading for vengeance. Let there be no doubt, says the Most High, I will hear their plea of all the innocent people who have been murdered, and I will take vengeance for what has been done to them." You know, they've slaughtered our people. It's been an onslaught against our people for a very long time. "My people are being led to the slaughter like a flock of sheep." You know, they were all convinced to go and take that vaccination in 2021. and 2020, you could say, because they, Operation Warp Speed brought it out. They will no longer have to live in Egypt. See, we're going to get out of here. The Most High is about to deliver us from this place. I will use all my strength and power to bring them out of the land. I will bring disasters upon the Egyptians, as I did earlier, and will destroy their country. Now, Egypt, ancient Egypt, the whole country wasn't destroyed. The military was, but the entire country wasn't. This time it's going to destroy the country by nuclear fire, proving that it's talking about modern-day Egypt. The whole land will be in mourning. It will be shaken to its foundation when I, the Most High, strike it and pound on it. And here's what's happening now with the crops and everything, right? The farmers will mourn because their seed will fail to sprout. Yeah, they can't get fertilizer because of this war that they caused. And their trees will be destroyed by blight, hail, and terrible storms. And that is by the blasting and hail that's coming via the ICBMs. The world and the people in it are doomed. The war that will bring their destruction is very near. Nations will arm themselves and fight against other nations. And that's what's happening now. There will be great political turmoil. That's what's happening now. People are fucking tired of Donald Trump. Then there are those that worship him all the way to the lake of fire. You could say, right? They worship him like a god, as I was going into before. With one group trying to overpower another and gain control while ignoring the legitimate government. Civil unrest. Right. Because a lot of people do not recognize Trump. You've got a lot of people that swear an oath to the older Constitution, which that's no more. There will no longer be free access to the cities. Yeah, it's going to be blocked off. Because the struggle for power will bring destruction, terror, and total confusion wherever people live. Yep. And what's going to be it? It tells you in verse 19. What's going to be the cause? Driven by famine and terrible suffering, people will assault their neighbors and mercilessly plunder their possessions. So remember, Esau was a thief from the beginning, and that's how he's going to go out. They're going to plunder everything, mercilessly. Yahweh says, I am calling together all the kings of the earth to come from the north, south, east, and west to turn back and restore what they have taken. I will pay them back with the same harsh treatment they have given to my chosen people. So there's recompense coming. So, we're seeing the beginning of all this take place. But a great shaking is coming. And you already see what the dates are. 4th of July already. You already know that they're out of oil by then. And you already know about all the shortages. But nonetheless, though, there's more about this as we get into this. Because, of course, everybody knows that these small hats have taken over. They've been here for a long time anyways, but people are realizing that, and they don't want to fight for the Israeli state. They're tired of the fucking Israeli state. So nonetheless, though, you're seeing how one group's going to fight against another. They don't want to fight for the Zionists anymore. There's uprisings happening. So hopefully this has all been edifying. Got one more here before I close this out. Then I want to say Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Hashem Rakakadash, Wa Abba. Brakatum, Jehofolek, Shalom.
Because the black pill would suggest that you were somehow hoping for a different outcome or believed something different, and then it turned out to be not the way that you thought, and so here's the black pill. Things are not as you thought they were. Things are not as they seemed to be, and so your black pill is that no, that was fake. That was an illusion, and now based on discovering that that was deception, that those were lies, that these circumstances were fake, that they were astroturf, that it wasn't real, has now led you to a conclusion that's blackpilling. You cannot truly know what's going on and simultaneously be a black pill doom scroller. VM Beautiful said something that was interesting as well on Spotify. I was devastated this morning finding out that Massey lost, but to be honest, at this point, I believe it's all theater, sadly. And by the way, none of this is meant to be disparaging. I'm not attacking or discouraging you from having these thoughts and from engaging in this discourse, because this is what we're here to do. I love you. I pray for you. Every single one of you, every single day, I hit my face morning and night, and I pray for you.
Antitrust.
And so these are the types of conversations that we need to have, but from a bare naked honest perspective, which means vulnerability, which means humility, which means discomfort. You have to be able to approach these conversations from a truly honest, in every way, perspective in order to be able to dissect these things. I was devastated this morning finding out that Massey lost, but to be honest, at this point, I believe it's all theater. Sadly, you can't have it both ways. You can't truly be blackpilled if you truly know what's going on, And if you know that at this point it's all theater, or believe that it's all theater, you can't truly be devastated by what happened in Kentucky's 4th District when Thomas Massie was defeated by Ed Gelring. And for our radio listening audience and for the podcast viewing audience, if you're digesting this audio only, I'm using words like defeat and lose and loss, and I'm using heavy air quotes. Obviously, we all know what happened in Kentucky. And it wasn't even about Ed Gelring. It wasn't even really about Donald Trump. It was about the system. It was about a weaponized system that was deployed after Thomas Massie had been targeted by that system because he proved that he was unviable. He proved that his votes could not be bought. He proved that his seat could not be bought. And the system proved that the seat can be bought. And they found out what the price tag was, roughly $35 million. Were you truly devastated to find out that Thomas Massie had lost? Uncensored AI, define devastated. Do that for me. Devastation typically, not exclusively, not all the time, but virtually every single time, devastation is attached to a catastrophic incident or an occurrence or an event that comes by surprise, that was unexpected. Did you really expect the electoral system to work as you have been told that it's designed to work? Did you really believe that in the system of governance in this country that we're all currently being attacked by, that there was a way for Thomas Massie to emerge victorious, to crawl his way through the mud without cooperating, without negotiating, and without capitulating, and that he would rise to victory in this particular primary election, this GOP primary
Let's see,
in Kentucky's 4th Congressional District? Did you really
Zionists.
believe that the system was going to work as you have been told that it is supposed to or is designed to work? Do you? Okay, put it up on the screen. Define devastated. Uncensored AI says devastated refers to a state of being utterly ruined, destroyed, or severely impacted emotionally, physically, or both. It describes the aftermath of extreme loss, trauma, or catastrophic change that leaves someone shattered beyond recovery.
And that's what Esau is,
And listen, I
devastated.
understand that it's disappointing. Were you really shattered beyond recovery? Did you really expect the system to work? Or is the second part of your statement true? Because again, these things cannot be simultaneous. I was devastated this morning finding out that Massie lost, but to be honest, at this point, I believe it's all theater. If you know or believe that it's all theater, and you know that these people are actors, that they are cosplaying, that they are LARPing, that they're in the pipeline, that they are playing their roles, that they are acting as a legitimate governing body, that this system of governance somehow in any way upholds the rule of law in this country, then truly you have been deceived. But I think that all of us, especially those of us here who have this conversation every day, we are leaps and bounds beyond that. This is an illegitimate system of governance. It is a fake system of governance. The left versus the right, the red versus the blue, the donkey versus the elephant, the Republican versus the Democrat. That's all fake and gay. We know that. We have arrived at that logical conclusion. So you can't have it both ways because we recognize that all of them are actors. All of them. And those who are not willing to go along with the script and read the lines that they are paid to read by the puppeteers, by the directors of this theatrical presentation, they lose their roles. Yeah, no, that's not a line that I'm willing to read. Well, then you can't be in this film. Because that's what the script says. These are your lines. Read them. No, I'm unwilling to read that line. But we're paying you $25 million to read it because you're the star of this feature film. We're paying you $25 million to read that line in that script that the writers put on that script. The directors are telling you to read that line with conviction. Go read it. No, I'm unwilling to do that. Well, then you're not in this movie. You can't star in this film.
Yep, they're in a special club and you ain't part of it. Shalom.